Well, I mean, yeah, like, they don't do a lot in those first 5 periods because it's a lot of like individual and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But, right away they came out and I think they wanted to set the tone. So they came out right away and worked on, a one-on-one tackling drill. It wasn't like, I mean, they were putting anybody at risk with this drill.
Mhm.
So I'll just say that it's just like one of those things where, you're basically like a few feet away from a guy, and it's like stopping a guy at the goal line, right? And you got to
Yeah.
like stop them. And it was linebackers and DBs versus running backs, tight ends, and receivers. Mostly backs and tight ends, but it was. I mean, I think it was one of those things where it's a little bit instructive, just because you could just you hear pads pop, right? And that's
Yeah.
always a good thing. And I mean, to me, right away, the first guy stood out was Christian Gray. I mean, you heard it. It was like,
Mhm.
Boom. Like that was a thing. And frankly, just watching Christian Gray, like in the drills, just the drill work, and they were doing some other tackling stuff after too. Man, I mean, he's a big dude. You can tell like he's added weight from last year. He looks bigger. And he already was, I mean, he showed out as a tackler in his little bit of time last year, but that's exactly, that kind of like big physicality is like what you want to see in like a boundary corner, right?
Yeah.
So that stood out. Like, I think that there was like, I mean, Kennedy Urlacher, who, I wasn't even like particularly like kind of looking for, like, I had to like remind myself that was like, he's number 23. And first of all, he's small. Like there's no confusion that he's going to be Brian Urlacher. He's not going to, unless he goes through like an incredible growth spurt, or like, the X gene
At 18, 19 years old,
activates in
like
his
that
thing and
happens all the
becomes,
time.
yes. So it's just not going to happen. He's just not built like that. I mean, but he's another guy like where, I mean, it was one of those where everybody was like, "Oh, right." And when you're not getting a big run and that kind of thing. So if someone's doing that, it shows up. And I think just, KVA in that drill, just seeing him, he had a nice rep, which was it was a good rep by Jack Larson too, who he was going against, but just seeing him, he's just, man, he is big. He is big, where he looks just as good or better than the linebackers who've been there for like a year or more, right? Like physically, man, he is legit, and he just, absolutely looks the part. That stood out. And I mean, Jordan Clark too, who's not another guy who's not a big guy. He's not a big guy, but I would say he is bigger than Thomas Harper. Like, to me, if I was going to look at him, I would say he looks just a bit thicker than Thomas Harper. But same, like, he's not super tall or anything like that, but man, that guy's got some snot in him. He was, I mean, chip off the old block in terms of just, his dad. Everybody remembers his dad playing for the Steelers, and some of those big hits that he had in some of those Ravens games. Like, I mean, he's got something to him. He's got an edge to him, which, that's a good fit as a nickel. And then a lot of the other stuff was just like indie stuff. I think that, he wasn't too instructive with some of the stuff that we saw. We couldn't really, I couldn't really watch the lines. Like they were out, so couldn't really see them. But saw a little bit with the defense where they were working with backers and safeties. They were working on like just some like passing off stuff and coverage, and just basically like based off of motion and stuff. And you could just see like they were so on point with things that I don't want to say it's surprising, because they do have veterans coming back, but it's not like it's Bertrand and Leofau there, right, with DJ Brown in there too, right? It's like, Schuler's new. Obviously Drake Bowen is new. Sneed is elevated up there too, with the excuse me, with the regular the base defense. And those guys are on top of things. They're really on top of things. And yeah, just thought that was, impressive. And I just think it was just interesting too, to see that when they went nickel for the first time, and like, whatever, you see at the beginning of practice, we don't know what they're doing later on in practice when they're doing it. But the first nickel group that came out, it was Sneed and Kaiser at linebacker, right? And then obviously Clark at nickel and X Watts and Schuler at safety. And I mean, just Schuler, he looks like $1 million, man. He looks physically so impressive and just big and long and moves well. And he's going to be interesting because I think he's a little bit different than some of the other guys that they've had, in recent years, just in terms of his just overall just size. Like, obviously, I don't even include, like, Kyle Hamilton's such a unicorn. It's just like, you can't even compare him to anybody else really. But like, just if you're going to say, like, compared to, say, Brown and Henderson last year, like, Schuler just looks different. And he just is different. So
linebacker situation, how do you see that progressing at this point in terms of, sounds like Drake Bowen's making a move. Sounds like Jaden Osbury looks really good. Kind of unclear about where Jalen Sneed fits into all this. We know KVA's looking impressive. Kind of how do you think things are sitting right as we speak today?
I mean, I think the fact that you have Sneed there and he's coming out with the ones and staying in there when it's the nickel, he's not the guy coming off the field.
Yeah.
That's not nothing, right? So I think,
for sure.
When there's that, what you're going to get out of Kaiser already at the bare minimum, like what the floor is there with Kaiser. And I think you look at that and you have Osbury, you have Bowen, who I would say Bowen is probably, above, with the top group for sure. Like he's, to me, not just with him rotating, but everything I've heard him, like he's going to play a lot this year. But I do think like KVA and Osbury are guys who are good enough to probably play. And from, that's stuff that I heard as well, that I think it's going to be like just good problems, really, right? Like good problem to have is that you have guys where maybe you don't have enough spots. And the one thing is that I do think nickels, you still got to match up, right? Personnel wise. So you're still going to have to play nickel a lot most of the time, right? Just based on the teams you play. But I think when you have Osbury and you have Sneed who can go out and play rover and be kind of like legitimate rovers, where I think like Kaiser can play rover, but I don't think that was his natural fit, where I think it is more of a fit athletically for Sneed and Osbury. So I think it gives you options, right? It gives you options. And it's just like how with Schuler gives you different options than what you would have with these other guys, right? And I mean, you didn't mention Rod Hurd in terms of because he's obviously not practicing yet, right? Like he's going to arrive in the summer, but I mean that's another guy that he adds to the versatility of what you can do in terms of him playing safety and then him, possibly playing some nickel too and all that too, right? So I really like that kind of group that they have in terms of like how multiple they can be. And obviously we didn't get to see, we didn't get to see any, like they were doing like inside run today. So it wasn't like you really get like a good look. And frankly, I could tell you all these other practices where, they were doing 7-on and Prince Coley looked great in 7-on, right? But it's like a different story when you get into when you're actually going, inside run and all that, right? So and team and all that. So we'll see it all work itself out. But I think the key is that however it works out, they're going to be good at linebacker. Like I think they're going to be very good.